These jeans are really super tight. Oh my god, I nearly fell. Cool. So I feel like my eyes look pretty cool because it's like, yeah, daylight and stuff. Hi there, it's Kovu. So this video is going to be pretty serious. I'm going to be talking about a very kind of sad topic, I guess, or like a very serious topic. I decided to make this video now because like 2 minutes ago I sat on my bed and I was looking through Instagram and I was looking at this Instagram account who had like 16,000 followers, and I was like, oh, I wish I was as attractive as them and that I had as many followers as them and that I was as popular as them. And then I was like, really, like just a few days ago that was not what I was worrying about. What I was worrying about was that my water bottle was empty and that I was really dehydrated. So this weekend I was at this thing called Camp Refugee, and basically in Norway confirmation is like a tradition. And if you're not familiar with what confirmation is, I think it's like this old Catholic thing that like the year a person turns 15 is the year that they kind of like get seen as an adult, and then they have to like freshen up the promise they made when they were baptized. You know, like, I'm a child of God and stuff. I'm not really sure, but it's a tradition in Norway. Usually only Christian people do it, and I'm like Christian, like I'm baptized and stuff, and Christianity is like my family religion, but I personally do not believe in God, so I do not want to have a Christian or religious confirmation. So therefore I chose to have like a non-Christian confirmation or non-religious confirmation, like an atheist confirmation, if you will. And a part of the things that you have to do leading up to the ceremony, which is in May, and I'm pretty excited because I'm gonna hold a speech, probably. One of the things you have to do is to go to this thing called Camp Refugee, or like be a part of this play called the play Refugee or something. I actually wrote down like everything we did right when I got home, so I'm just gonna read it out loud to you. The reason I'm making this video is to kind of put things into perspective. So first we got divided into groups of 25. Like our group was 23, but it was like all the other groups were 20, like they consisted of 25 people. And your group was like your family, so like, yeah. First we had to spend 3 hours inside the building wearing our extremely heavy backpacks, walking into offices and meeting people who were mostly extremely mean, yelled at by policemen and others for a variety of things, for example putting our backpacks on the floor, leaning on the walls, smiling, laughing, showing our hair, etc. And if you got lost in there, we were pretty much fun. We were in the corridor of the first floor of that building, more than 355 people. We got pushed into doors and walls. It wasn't fun. So that was basically like the whole thing happened like in Sudan, like that was like the place, like we were in Norway at a military base, but it was like supposed, yeah, you know. And that was basically when we were trying to get out of the country, so we had to go to like health checks, and we had to like check if we were like smart enough to leave the country, and yeah. Then we got outside and we had to walk for what seemed like a countless amount of hours in the dark. You see, we weren't allowed to know how much the time was, and that like made us go a bit crazy. The ground was covered in ice. If someone talked, the whole group got punished. We had to run and hide and throw ourselves on the ground every time a car came, and we had to climb over stuff, and it wasn't fun. Then the military stopped us, and the people who were going to guide us through the country constantly yelled at us. As I said, we had to run and throw ourselves on the ground and hide every time a car came and passed us. So the road we were walking at in the start was like covered in ice. So when I was gonna run, I ran and I slipped and my knee dislocated. It was actually a good thing that my knee dislocated, and I thought I would never say that, but then somebody else could carry my backpack for me. That was good. Then we were gonna cross the border to some other country, and we had to stand there and wait for a very, very, very long time while the military screamed at us. This was like the worst part of the trip. Then we finally did cross the border, and we had to wait for even longer, and the military was still there, and they screamed in our faces and took our passports and asked us about the information on our passport. And like, we hadn't gotten the time to learn everything about a new identity, because like we were given a new identity like enrolled in the play, and we weren't given the time to learn everything about that, like that person you were playing. So if we didn't answer or answer correctly, we'd have to do push-ups with our extremely heavy backpacks on. After forever, we could finally start walking again. After a while, we got to a UN camp where we could finally rest. We could refill our water bottles, and we got a teaspoon of cold, wet, burnt rice. We lay down in our cold, wet sleeping bags, and of course it had to start raining. Then after a little while, police came and yelled at us to get up. So we had to pack our bags again and get up and walk all the way back to the building we started at. People were crying, it was raining, it was cold, everyone was just exhausted and just done with life. We got back to the house and we were now in Norway. We were gonna get pizza, but that didn't happen as the police came and arrested the people who worked there and us as well. 25 people were pushed into a tiny room and told to go to sleep. All of our sleeping bags were so cold and wet to the point where it was warmer to just lay down on the cold floor. We had to get up several times during the night and we didn't really get any sleep. Every time we got up, we were still pissed that it was dark outside. Then I think I was so exhausted and hungry to the point where my brain just stopped working. What I remember is that it finally started getting bright outside, and then, after more than 26 hours of no food, they told us that Camp Refugee was over and we got breakfast. Yogurt, bread and milk. It made me feel quite sick because I hadn't eaten in a very, very long time. I was exhausted, physically and mentally. I was cold, wet and dehydrated, and I felt like I was going to die. Real refugees have to go through that every day. For us, it was about getting screamed at and getting frustrated and exhausted. For real refugees, it's about life or death. We knew that soon we would be back home with our parents, but refugees do not know how long it will take before they get a better life, or if they ever will get a better life at all. When we think about refugees, we think about the ones who have already come to our country, not the ones who are out there running away from war and hunger right now. I learned a lot on that trip, and they actually said that what we learn on that trip, or like at Camp Refugee, equals a whole year of social studies in school. That's pretty cool. I learned a lot about how important food and water is, and how I have to stop taking that for granted. I also learned how important it is to stick together and back each other up as a group. And I also learned a lot about how military and the police works in other countries. And most importantly, I learned how amazingly lucky I am to live in Norway, and to be alive, and to be safe, and to have food on the table and water in the tap. And I go to school, I will get an education, I will get a good life. So why am I complaining that I do not have as many Instagram followers as some random person? So yeah, eat, drink and do not hurt yourselves. Stay safe and I will see you soon. Bye!